The R8 revolver was once the most powerful weapon in the game. When it was released, it was in a state that no weapon came close to. It hit as hard as an op, had glitches that made it fire insanely fast, and only cost $850. It was nerfed to the ground only 2 days later. The community immediately ditched it and forgot about the gun soon after. More attempts were made by Valve to make the gun a more viable option, mainly reducing the price from 850 to 700, then 600, but the community in general still refused to pick this gun back up. What changed this gun from the most powerful weapon in the game into a meme gun? Well, first we must look at the stats. The gun originally had an extremely high damage of 115, meaning it was able to one-shot armored opponents to the body at most ranges. And it also has 8 rounds at a great accuracy, especially compared to the Deagle. The R8 is also the only gun with a delayed trigger action. Originally, you had to wait a third of a second for the gun to fire after you left-clicked. However, if you didn't want to deal with this delay, you can just right-click instead. However, when you do this, is so inaccurate that you will only hit shots if you are point blank to your opponent, and even then you'll probably miss. After its nerf, however, the damage was dropped significantly to 85, the accuracy slightly reduced, and the firing delay significantly increased, now to 4/10ths of a second. This made the gun require 2 body shots to kill, where it only required 1 originally. And now with the increased fire delay, the time to kill was so bad that it was just unbearable for $50. Yes, you could think about it as a pocket scout, but without the scope, it's much harder to use at long ranges, and there's also a shot delay before you are able to fire the shot, which is also really annoying to deal with. Yes, you can still fight long range with it, but why not just buy the scout at that point and have an easier time? Needless to say, the R2 is also pretty bad at close range. That's the range you're usually getting spammed at. And the secondary fire is so inaccurate that it will still miss every shot at close range. So the R8 became outclassed in long range and a joke in any closer range. Sure, it was a lot cheaper than the Scout. 850 is still a lot for a gun that it's just so limited in capabilities. And another issue is that back then with the weapon system, you would have to slide it out for the Deagle, which made the problem even worse because when your competition is one of the best weapons in the game, you're going to have to work really hard to prove yourself. Let's compare its stats to the Deagle for reference. The Deagle initially cost $150 less, being $700 and still being $700, and could also one-tap the head like the R8. The Deagle, however, could only 2 shot to the body at very close ranges, dropping off to a 3 or even 4 shots at longer ranges. And at extremely long ranges, it would take 5 shots and not even one-tap head. The R8 stays consistent in 2 shots to the body no matter what, and it always one-shots the head. What sets the Deagle apart is the fire rate. There is no delay for the Deagle in firing, and its recoil recovery was reasonably fast, meaning you can have an effective fire rate of almost twice the speed of the R8. It also has more ammo, meaning that along with the extra spam ability, you can shoot people for a much longer time. This meant the Deagle is much more reliable at medium and especially close ranges, and can fight more than one person at a time and have a chance. It's simply more versatile than the R8, and while the R8 has some upsides, when compared to the Deagle, it's not enough to justify the $150 extra you have to pay. However, as I mentioned, there have been buffs. The gun's delay was reduced, in fact being cut in half. I feel like there's also a delay before the gun can start to ramp its shot, making the total delay 0.4 seconds though. So yeah, there's that. But the cost was also reduced to $700 and then $600. However, while it's certainly a far better choice than it was before and has a much better cost to value ratio, it still wasn't worth dropping it for the Deagle. Yes, it has far better accuracy and unlike the Deagle, can function well at extreme ranges, but most fights don't happen so far that the Deagle cannot perform as well, if not better, than the R8. Maybe 1 or 2 out of every 6 fights you'll want the R8 over the Deagle, although it absolutely depends on the map. However, while it is objectively better to use the Deagle over the R8, now using the R8 over Deagle isn't that bad of a choice, although it's off meta. Unfortunately, it was still a meme gun during this time, and it looked like it would stay that way. However, one day, all that changed. When Counter-Strike 2 was released, the weapon system was completely reworked. Now instead of a wheel you had to choose from, there was a huge bar that appears on your screen when you wanted to buy weapons. There are multiple different categories with multiple slots in them. However, the biggest thing is that instead of having to choose one of 2 guns to fit a role, you can simply just put them both in the same loadout. No more argument over whether the M4A1S is more versatile than the M4A4, as you can just put them both in the same inventory and use them when you do need it. Do you not like opping? Simply remove the op from the inventory and replace it with a rifle of your choice. Now that you can customize your arsenal more, albeit with less weapons per slot, you can now put both the R8 and the Deagle in the same loadout, so you can use the Deagle in the situations where you need it, and the R8 in the more niche ones. The R8 has now seen a resurgence in the Counter-Strike community, and recently more and more people have been finding out the R8 is not really that bad. Remember when I said earlier that at $600 replacing the Deagle with the R8 is no longer that bad of an idea? Well, let's see why that is. I mentioned already the R8 is much more accurate than the Deagle, but I didn't mention it could also be used as a support weapon instead of a full sniper. If you shoot somebody with the R8 and are unable to land more shots, they will much more likely die from your other teammates when compared to the Deagle. Playing the R8 as support was a horrible idea when the price was so high, but now that the price is far lower, it is much more reasonable to do that. Again, it's still much more niche in the situations it's great in, so it wasn't a good idea to swap it out for Deagle, but putting it alongside the Deagle in your inventory is not a bad idea. I've been giving vague comparisons between the R8 and the Deagle the whole video, but now it's time to do a very direct one. I will use the nice weapon stats comparison sites for reference. As you can see immediately though, they both have the same armor penetration, but the R8 has much higher base damage. You may wonder why the Deagle has the ability to two-shot, but apparently if you hit the stomach it does more damage than hitting the chest. The Deagle on the other hand has a far higher fire rate, although it is ineffective to use either weapon at their max fire rate. The Deagle, while it's taking an extra shot to kill, has such a fast fire compared to the R8 that it beats it out on time to kill. However, believe me when I say that the range of the Deagle will 4-shot is not too far away, and it isn't a rare occurrence. Also, the Deagle at its maximum fire rate is horrendously inaccurate, so you will likely not have this fast time to kill. The recovery time is 0.45 seconds max, meaning your reliable fire rate while crouched is about 2 shots a second. They also have the same kill reward and reload time, but this is where their similarities end. The recoil on the R8 is very low, but this does not matter because of the firing delay, so you cannot shoot fast anyway. As you can also see, the R8 beats out the Deagle in everything accuracy related. This is why I mentioned it a lot in the video, as the R8 beats it out by a lot. The most notable accuracy difference is in the running accuracy. The Deagle is horrendously inaccurate while moving, making its playstyle more similar to a rifle. However, the R8 is actually accurate when moving, which really works in its favor and makes it far more accessible to use and get good with. Overall, while the Deagle is objectively better, the R8 has a lot of things going for it when compared to the Deagle, and it also saves money. In fact, to be honest, I prefer the R8 to the Deagle because the inaccuracy is, in my opinion, very annoying to deal with compared to the R8's trigger delay. In anywhere outside of high-level play, it really comes down to preference, and I feel at this point, the R8 is not that far behind the Deagle. I will keep both in my inventory as I'm not great at pistol headshots, so I'll use the R8 to get good body shot damage to help my team, but the R8 is now no longer a meme gun and is actually a decent option, and I highly recommend trying it out. It is not very meta, but it is fun to use, and it is an option when you want to surprise your opponents. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know down in the comments whether you prefer the R8 or the Deagle, and that's it for the video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.